Yo, this movie is like really good, man. I know I'm really late on watching this, and this is only really because I heard really mixed things on how it was too boring or something. Even though I get the critique, I really shouldn't have listened to that. But like, holy cow, I did not expect to love this movie as much as I did. I mean, it's not perfect. I do have some issues with it, which I'll talk about later, but for now, I'm just gonna talk about how Ad Astra is beautiful. Ad Astra is visually the most stunning movie of the entire year, and the way it chooses to tell its main narrative is seriously amazing. Obviously, this movie looks freaking fantastic, but I don't know, that's not actually what I'm mainly gonna talk about. There are seriously like an endless amount of shots in this that I can go over, but then I'd be making like a half an hour video on how many shots I love. This movie kind of has some pretty divisive reviews, and I get some of them. The most popular one is that it's just kind of boring, but besides that critique, the main problem I can see with people, like having with this movie is how it chooses to tell its story. I can tell that some people might get angry on what they thought the movie was actually going to be instead of what it actually is. The way this movie tells its story was honestly pretty unexpected. The movie kind of marketed itself as this, space thriller with Brad Pitt, but it's like kind of the opposite of that. It's basically a slow burn movie about a father and a son and how, their relationship is. It has these elements in it, sort of like thrilling kind of action moments, but it's very there's very few amount of those, and that's not at all what the movie is, and I kind of sort of blame the marketing for that. But besides that, the movie kind of sets up its plot as this adventure that Brad Pitt needs to go on to save the planet from these surges that are happening on Earth, and that he needs to save the world by going into space to find out what the problem is. See, this from that description, this kind of sounds like an epic kind of space action movie that we've kind of already seen before, like Interstellar. But this movie is anything but that. It's not about Brad Pitt's character trying to save the world and going on all these, epic space adventures while doing so like it's set up in the beginning. It's about a human story about a troubled father and a son that is told in a very kind of grandiose narrative. The best way I can sort of describe this is it's 2001 meets Interstellar mixed with a father and son troubled relationship. And it is fantastic. It broke things down to scale and made the movie so unique and grounded amidst such a high-stake narrative about saving the planet. The thing I love most about this movie is how going into this movie actually supports its main theme. What? Here, let me explain. I believe most people went into this with this sort of one expectation to get out of it, but then ended up coming out of the journey discovering something completely different. What I mean by this is that Brad Pitt's character, Roy, went into the mission to find out what was causing these surges on Earth, but ended up going on an unexpected self-discovery journey of what he actually wants out of life by finding his father and making closure with him. His father ended up showing him what he truly wanted from his own life due to his own miserable mistakes. During the movie, the father leaves and abandons his family, knowing that it would hurt them dearly, but he didn't care. He did this in search of alien and intelligent life. This was all he ever wanted, and all he ever thought would make him happy as a person, but really ended up rotting and living his life miserably. Alone. I love this metaphor of how he kept on searching for something that he never found and probably doesn't even really exist, instead of keeping the things that he has found and expanding upon that. By choosing this life, he lives away in a ship with his dead crewmates. He even refuses to go with his son when he finds him because he still wants to accomplish his mission. He believes that if he goes with him, then his entire life choices would have been for nothing. He abandoned his son, he abandoned his wife, and if he goes back with him, he'd be a failure. He'd have done all of that for nothing. He knows deep down that his son is right and there is no intelligent life to be found, but instead of going back, he chooses to let go and suffocate in space. Through this entire journey, Roy discovered life, what he truly wants from it, and how he pushed away his ex-wife just like his father did, and he doesn't want to make the same mistake. He wants to be better and have a life. He presumably goes back to his ex-wife in the end and will most likely have a kid that he will choose to share a great bond with instead of abandoning them. It showed that the main character went into this whole plot thinking he would do this sort of grandiose mission to save the planet, but ended up doing something completely different. So it's really just like, you are the main character, you experience the same things, which I loved. Even though I love the heck out of this movie, it's not perfect. I kind of have like one major flaw with it, which, you know, I'll explain in just a second. There are a lot of crazy and cool stuff that happens in this movie. For example, we see that the moon and Mars have been they've been partly colonized. They go on a flight to the moon. It's sort of like going through an airport, and it's sort of, I don't know, it doesn't feel regular, but it feels modernized, I suppose. And there are like these little attractions where like there's a kid taking a picture with an alien, and there's this little station that looks kind of like an airport station where you get your souvenirs or whatever, and it sort of looks like that. There are also people who just live on the moon and become like freaking space pirates, robbing and killing people for valuables. It's really cool. This stuff I really dig because they're really cool, like unique concepts, but the stuff that takes me out of the movie is really towards the end. During the end, Roy needs to get back to his ship, and he sort of just is able to choose where he needs to drift off to, and then uses part of a satellite to shield himself from small asteroids to get back to it. What? Yeah, this isn't even the most ridiculous part. He then decides to blow the satellite to hell since there's apparently a lot of nuclear power in it, and he thinks that it'll be enough to propel him forward since he has no fuel left. Apparently he needs to travel about 2.7 billion miles, so he just kinda says screw it and blows up that nuclear stuff. Thankfully, the giant nuclear blast is just shy enough away from touching his ship and killing him. Eventually he makes it back and conveniently lands in an area where the military recognizes who he is and helps him instead of, landing in some other like random foreign place. So pretty lucky. Honestly, I had a good laugh about this instead of it like really being that big of a problem, to be honest. It is, after all, it's science fiction, but the movie kind of takes itself really seriously, so seeing all this stuff was kind of jarring, not really gonna lie. Lastly, I'm just gonna wrap up all my thoughts here. I freaking love this movie, man. And I understand if, you don't, but this movie just has so much to offer and asks some really, really deep questions about life that I was not expecting at all. It leads you into thinking that it's gonna be some dire mission to go into space and save the planet, but it's not that at all. It's such an interesting type of character study about how Roy goes on this journey of self-discovery, and not a discovery about the universe, but because ultimately what matters is our personal lives, not all these potential external factors that can or cannot be found. Building a foundation of what makes you happy is the best thing that you can find, is what this movie really teaches you, and that's the most beautiful thing about Ad Astra. So yeah, this wasn't the most funny or entertaining video I could have made, but I just felt really compelled to make a video analysis on this. Once I saw it, I just knew I had to make a video on it. I have all these other movies and shows that I, wanted to make, but then, I watched this. If you haven't watched Ad Astra, please check it out. Anyway, there are a lot of other videos that I'm gonna make that are gonna come out, like a review on Star Wars or, some other fun stuff. So stay tuned to check all that out, and I hope you guys have a great day. Peace.